There comes a moment in every life when the soul grows tired of carrying weight that was never meant to be held. A moment when the heart whispers what the mind has long ignored. You feel it in your chest when laughter turns hollow, when conversations drain you instead of nourishing you, when your spirit grows quiet in the presence of people who once felt like home. This is not weakness. This is wisdom awakening. Some people enter your life as lessons, not lifetimes. They come to teach you where your boundaries should have been, where your self-love was delayed, where your voice was silenced to keep the peace. And once the lesson is learned, the soul begins to ache for distance. You are not cruel for listening to that ache. You are courageous. Toxic people do not always arrive with sharp edges and raised voices. Sometimes they arrive smiling, wrapped in familiarity, cloaked in history. Sometimes they call themselves friends. Sometimes they share your blood. Sometimes they know your wounds and press them gently enough that you doubt your own pain. But make no mistake, anything that requires you to shrink, to doubt your worth, to abandon your truth in order to be accepted is not love. It is a slow erosion of the self. You were not born to be a container for someone else's unresolved anger, insecurity, or fear. You were not placed on this earth to fix what refuses to be healed. There is a difference between compassion and self-betrayal, and many kind hearts learn that difference far too late. They confuse endurance with loyalty, suffering with strength. But strength is not measured by how much pain you can tolerate. Strength is measured by how fiercely you protect your peace. Watch how your body responds around certain people. The body keeps records the mind tries to erase. If your shoulders tighten, if your breath shortens, if your joy feels like an inconvenience in their presence, your body is speaking truth. Listen. You owe your life that respect. Toxic connections thrive on your silence. They grow bold when you explain yourself too much, when you apologize for having needs, when you bend so often that standing straight feels unfamiliar. They benefit from your empathy without offering you safety. And over time you begin to disappear, not all at once, but in small, quiet ways. You stop sharing your dreams. You soften your laughter. You censor your happiness. This is how the spirit dims, not through tragedy, but through constant dismissal. Letting go does not always require confrontation. Sometimes it is a gentle withdrawal, a sacred choosing of distance. Sometimes it is unanswered calls, fewer explanations, longer pauses. Sometimes it is the quiet decision to no longer attend what wounds you. You do not owe everyone access to your inner world. Privacy is not secrecy. Distance is not punishment, it is protection. You may feel guilt rise up when you begin to choose yourself. Guilt is the echo of old conditioning that taught you love must be earned through sacrifice. But real love does not demand self-erasure. Real friendship does not compete with your growth. Real connection celebrates your becoming, even when it means change. There will be people who accuse you of changing when you finally stop tolerating disrespect. Let them talk. You did not change. You remembered who you were before you learned to survive by shrinking. You remembered your worth before it was negotiated away in the name of belonging. Not everyone will understand your decision to walk away. Some will benefit too much from your silence to applaud your strength. Some will miss the version of you that accepted less. But understanding is not required for your healing. Approval is not a prerequisite for your freedom. When you cut toxic people out of your life, you make room for something holy. You create space for peace to enter, for clarity to breathe, for joy to stretch its limbs. At first, the space may feel lonely. Silence can be unfamiliar when chaos has been your companion, but stay with it. There is a difference between loneliness and solitude. One drains you, the other restores you. In that solitude, you begin to hear yourself again. Your laughter returns, not forced, not cautious, but free. Your dreams speak louder. Your intuition sharpens. You remember what it feels like to be respected without explanation, loved without condition, supported without competition. This is not too much to ask. This is the bare minimum of human connection. Some people will try to pull you back with nostalgia. They will remind you of shared memories, of who you used to be together. But memories are not promises. History is not a contract. The past cannot be used to justify a present that harms you. You are allowed to outgrow what once felt essential. Forgiveness may come, but forgiveness does not require proximity. You can release resentment without reopening doors. You can wish someone well without welcoming them back into your life. Forgiveness is an internal act. Boundaries are external. Both can coexist. As you move forward, be gentle with yourself. Grief often accompanies growth. You are not just letting go of people. You are letting go of expectations, of imagined futures, of the hope that they would one day change. Allow yourself to mourn what never was. That grief is honest. It is human. It is part of the healing. And understand this: walking away from toxicity is not an act of hate. It is an act of love. Love for the self that waited too long to be chosen. Love for the future that deserves your full presence. Love for the peace that has been knocking quietly, patiently, all this time. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow. When you choose yourself, you set a standard that echoes beyond you. You become an example not through words, but through action. You show others that it is possible to be kind without being consumed, to be loving without being lost. There is power in knowing when to leave. There is grace in no longer arguing with those committed to misunderstanding you. There is freedom in releasing the need to be liked by people who do not respect you. Your life is too sacred for constant defense. As you continue on this path, you will attract those who meet you with honesty, who listen without waiting to respond, who celebrate your light instead of dimming it. These connections may be fewer, but they will be deeper. They will feel like rest, not resistance. Remember, you are allowed to protect your joy. You are allowed to choose peace over familiarity. You are allowed to walk away without explaining your wounds. The world will try to convince you that endurance is virtue, that loyalty means staying no matter the cost, but your spirit knows better. Your spirit knows that staying where you are diminished is a slow form of self-abandonment. Choose yourself, again and again, even when it is uncomfortable. Especially when it is uncomfortable. Growth rarely feels gentle at first, but it always leads to truth. And truth, once embraced, becomes a refuge no one can take from you. One day you will look back and realize the moment you let go was the moment your life began to open. The air felt lighter. Your heart felt stronger. And you finally understood that cutting toxic people out of your life was not an ending, but a powerful beginning. Your energy is sacred. Stop giving it to those who misuse it, because every moment of your attention carries life within it. Energy is not just what you do. It is what you feel, what you think, what you carry silently inside your chest. When you give it away carelessly, you do not always notice the loss at first. It happens slowly through constant explaining, constant forgiving, constant adjusting, until one day you realize you are exhausted without understanding why. Some people consume energy without ever intending to return it. They arrive with endless needs, endless complaints, endless chaos, and they leave you feeling smaller than before. They may not raise their voices or openly disrespect you. Sometimes they simply take, expecting your patience, your understanding, your emotional labor as if it were unlimited. Over time, you begin to feel drained after every interaction, yet you keep showing up, telling yourself it is your responsibility, telling yourself that kindness means endurance. But sacred things are not meant to be endlessly accessible. They are meant to be honored. Your energy deserves reverence because it is the force that fuels your creativity, your healing, your joy, your growth. When you give it to those who misuse it, You are offering water to a place that refuses to grow anything beautiful. You are investing in emptiness and wondering why you feel empty in return. Misuse of your energy does not always look like cruelty. Sometimes it looks like familiarity that takes you for granted. It looks like people who only reach out when they need something. It looks like conversations that revolve around their pain, while yours remains unspoken. It looks like relationships where you are expected to understand endlessly, but never be understood. These dynamics teach you to prioritize others while slowly abandoning yourself. Energy is sacred because it is finite. You wake up each day with only so much emotional capacity, only so much focus, only so much patience. When you spend it all on people who do not respect it, you have nothing left for yourself. Your dreams are postponed. Your rest feels guilty. Your silence feels wrong. This is not because you are selfish for needing space. It is because you have been giving too much to places that give you nothing back. There is a subtle violence in relationships that constantly drain you. Not loud, not obvious, but persistent. It shows up as anxiety before conversations, as tension in your body, as relief when someone is absent. These are signals, not weaknesses. Your body and spirit recognize imbalance long before your mind is willing to accept it. Stopping the misuse of your energy does not require anger. It requires awareness. It requires noticing how you feel before, during, and after interactions. It requires honesty about what you have been tolerating. Many people stay in draining connections because they fear being seen as selfish or unkind. But protecting your energy is not cruelty. It is survival with dignity. You are not meant to be available at all times. You are not meant to carry emotional weight that is not yours. You are not meant to fix, heal, or rescue everyone who crosses your path. When you take on these roles, your own life begins to shrink. Your needs become background noise. Your desires feel inconvenient. And yet, your energy continues to leak into spaces that do not deserve it. There is power in choosing where your energy flows. When you stop giving it to those who misuse it, you begin to redirect it toward yourself, toward rest without guilt, toward joy without justification, toward growth without permission. This redirection feels uncomfortable at first because you are breaking patterns that once defined your worth. You may feel the urge to explain yourself, to apologize for pulling back, to overcompensate for your absence. Resist that urge gently. People who benefit from your overgiving will notice the change. They may accuse you of being distant. They may question your priorities. They may try to pull you back with guilt or obligation. These reactions reveal more about their dependence than about your character. Sacred energy is not meant to be controlled by those who misuse it. As you reclaim your energy, you may discover parts of yourself that were neglected. Creativity returns. Peace becomes familiar. Your thoughts slow down. You begin to feel present in your own life again. This is not coincidence. It is what happens when your energy is no longer scattered across places that drain you. Giving less to others does not mean you become cold. It means you become intentional. It means you learn to offer your presence where it is valued, where it is respected, where it is met with reciprocity. Energy shared in mutual respect multiplies. Energy given to misuse disappears. Your energy is sacred because it shapes the quality of your life. Where you place it determines what grows. If you place it in chaos, chaos multiplies. If you place it in respect, respect deepens. Choosing where your energy goes is one of the most powerful acts of self-respect you can make. You are allowed to step back without explanation. You are allowed to rest without earning it. You are allowed to protect your peace without defending it. The world may try to convince you that availability equals worth, but your spirit knows better. Your spirit knows that sacred things are protected, not depleted. As you move through life with this awareness, you will naturally let go of connections that drain you. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You will choose fewer, deeper interactions. You will recognize when something feels heavy and refuse to carry it. This is not loss. This is alignment. Your energy is sacred. And when you stop giving it to those who misuse it, you reclaim yourself in quiet, powerful ways. You become present. You become grounded. You become whole. Peace begins where explaining yourself ends, and that truth often arrives quietly after exhaustion has already taken its toll. For so long, many people live as if their worth depends on being understood, as if clarity from others is the final proof that they are valid. They rehearse conversations in their minds, search for the perfect words, soften their pain, simplify their truth, all in the hope that someone will finally say, "Now I see you." But peace does not live in that waiting. Peace does not grow in the space where your heart is constantly on trial. There is a deep wariness that comes from explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You speak with honesty, and they respond with suspicion. You share your feelings, and they question your intentions. You set boundaries, and they accuse you of being cold. Over time, you begin to doubt your own clarity, wondering if perhaps you are asking for too much, feeling too deeply, needing too much space. This is how self-trust erodes, not through one loud betrayal, but through countless small moments of being asked to justify your humanity. Explaining yourself becomes a habit long before it becomes a burden. It starts innocently with the desire to be fair, to be kind, to avoid conflict. You explain why you are tired, why you need rest, why you cannot show up the way you used to. You explain your silence, your growth, your change. And each explanation teaches others that they are entitled to a reason every time you choose yourself. Slowly, your life becomes a courtroom, and you are both the defendant and the defense, pleading for understanding that rarely comes. There is a difference between healthy communication and emotional overexposure. Healthy communication happens where there is mutual respect, where your words are received with care, where curiosity replaces judgment. Explaining yourself endlessly happens where your boundaries are not honored, where your truth is debated, where your feelings are treated as inconveniences. Peace begins when you learn to recognize that difference, when you stop offering explanations to those who only collect them as ammunition. Not everyone deserves access to your inner reasoning. Some people listen only to respond, not to understand. Some people hear your explanations and twist them into narratives that serve their comfort. Some people demand clarity not because they are confused, but because they are unwilling to accept your autonomy. To keep explaining yourself in such spaces is to hand over your power, one sentence at a time. There comes a moment when you realize that being understood is not the same as being at peace. You can explain yourself perfectly and still be dismissed. You can speak with kindness and still be met with resistance. You can tell the truth calmly and still be misunderstood on purpose. When that realization settles in, something shifts. You begin to see that peace does not require agreement. It requires alignment, alignment with your own values, your own limits, your own sense of right and wrong. Silence, in this context, is not avoidance. It is discernment. It is the choice to stop pouring energy into conversations that drain you. It is the understanding that your life does not need a public defense. Silence becomes a sanctuary where your nervous system can rest, where your thoughts no longer have to be polished for acceptance, where your feelings can exist without explanation. People who benefit from your over-explaining will resist this change. They may accuse you of becoming distant, secretive, selfish. They may say you have changed, that you are no longer open. But what they are really mourning is the loss of access, the loss of control, the loss of your willingness to overextend yourself for their comfort. Peace asks you to let them misunderstand you, if that is the price of protecting your inner calm. When you stop explaining yourself, you start listening inward. You begin to ask not, How will this be perceived? But does this feel right to me? You learn to trust your intuition without seeking external confirmation. This trust is fragile at first because it has been neglected for so long. But with practice, it strengthens. You start to notice how much lighter you feel when you do not rehearse conversations that may never happen, when you do not prepare defenses for boundaries you have every right to set. Explaining yourself often comes from the fear of being rejected. You believe that if you can just find the right words, you will be accepted, understood, loved. But real acceptance does not require constant clarification. Real love does not demand that you justify your needs. The people who are meant to stay in your life will not need a detailed explanation for every change you make to survive and grow. Peace begins where you accept that misunderstanding is sometimes inevitable. Not everyone has the capacity to see you clearly, especially if your clarity threatens their comfort. And that is not your burden to carry. You are allowed to evolve without narrating every step. You are allowed to make decisions without defending them. You are allowed to protect your energy without explaining why it matters. There is profound freedom in realizing that you do not owe the world a version of yourself that makes sense to everyone. You owe yourself honesty. You owe yourself rest. You owe yourself the right to live without constant justification. When you stop explaining yourself, you reclaim time, energy, and emotional space that was never meant to be spent convincing others of your worth. Peace grows in the quiet moments where you choose not to respond, not to clarify, not to engage. It grows when you let go of the need to be seen as good, reasonable, or agreeable. It grows when you choose to be true instead. This kind of peace is not loud or dramatic. It is steady. It is grounding. It allows you to move through the world without carrying the weight of other people's expectations. As you practice this, you may feel discomfort. Old habits do not dissolve without protest. You may feel the urge to explain, to smooth things over, to make sure everyone is okay with your choices. Sit with that urge. Notice it without obeying it. Over time, you will learn that the discomfort passes, and what remains is a deeper sense of self-respect. Peace begins where explaining yourself ends, because peace is rooted in self-acceptance, not external validation. It is rooted in the quiet confidence that your life does not need to be understood by everyone to be meaningful. It is rooted in the courage to let your actions speak, your boundaries stand, your silence protect you, and your truth exist without defense. Walking away is strength when staying costs your self-respect, a truth that many people learn only after they have given too much of themselves away. For a long time, the world teaches that endurance is noble, that staying is proof of loyalty, that leaving means failure. People are praised for how much they can tolerate, how long they can suffer silently, how often they can bend without breaking. But what is rarely taught is that there is a quiet kind of courage in knowing when something is no longer worthy of your presence. Staying is often easier than leaving, not because it feels right, but because it feels familiar. Familiar pain can become comfortable in its own way. You learn its patterns, its moods, its limits. You know how to survive it. Walking away, on the other hand, requires stepping into uncertainty. It requires trusting yourself without guarantees. It requires believing that your dignity matters more than the approval of others. That belief does not come easily, especially to those who have been taught to put everyone else first. Self-respect is not loud. It does not announce itself. It shows up in the choices you make when no one is applauding. It lives in the moments when you decide not to beg for basic decency, when you refuse to explain why you deserve kindness, when you stop negotiating your worth. Every time you stay in a place that diminishes you, self-respect takes a quiet step backward. Not because you are weak, but because you are trying to survive in an environment that asks you to abandon yourself. There are relationships where your presence is expected, but your feelings are ignored. Where your effort is required, but your needs are inconvenient. Where your silence is preferred over your honesty. In these spaces, staying becomes an act of slow self-erasure. You begin to doubt your instincts. You second-guess your reactions. You tell yourself that you are overreacting, too sensitive, too demanding. And each time you do that, you move a little further away from who you truly are. Walking away does not mean you did not care. Often, it means you cared too much for too long. It means you gave chances, explanations, patience, and hope. It means you tried to make it work even when it was costing you your peace. Strength is not found in endless tolerance. Strength is found in the moment you say enough, not with anger, but with clarity. Many people fear walking away because they do not want to be seen as the villain in someone else's story. They worry about being misunderstood, judged, or blamed. But living your life to maintain a role in someone else's narrative is a heavy burden. You are not responsible for how others interpret your boundaries. You are responsible for honoring them. Staying where you are disrespected just to appear kind is a betrayal of the self. Self-respect asks difficult questions. It asks why you are staying. It asks what you are hoping will change. It asks how much more you are willing to lose to keep something that is already harming you. These questions are uncomfortable because they strip away excuses. They force you to confront the truth without decoration. And truth, while painful, is also liberating. Walking away is often mistaken for giving up. But there is a difference between giving up on someone and giving up on yourself. When staying requires you to shrink, to stay silent, to accept less than you deserve, leaving becomes an act of preservation. It becomes a declaration that your well-being is not optional, that your dignity is not negotiable. There is grief in walking away, even when it is necessary. You grieve the version of the future you imagined. You grieve the hope that things would improve. You grieve the time, energy, and love you invested. This grief does not mean you made the wrong choice. It means you are human. It means you cared deeply. Strength does not eliminate pain. It carries it with honesty. Sometimes you stay because you remember who someone used to be, not who they are now. You stay loyal to potential, to memories, to promises that were never fulfilled. But self-respect lives in the present, not in nostalgia. It asks you to see things as they are, not as they once were or could have been. Walking away is choosing reality over illusion. There are moments when staying teaches others that you will tolerate anything, that your boundaries are flexible, that your needs can be postponed indefinitely. Walking away teaches something different. It teaches that you value yourself, that you are not afraid to choose dignity over comfort, that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. Strength is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet, steady, and unseen. It is the strength to stop explaining yourself, the strength to stop hoping someone will change when they have shown you who they are, the strength to choose peace over chaos, even when chaos feels familiar. Walking away often happens without applause, without validation, without closure. And still, it is one of the most powerful acts of self-respect you can make. When you walk away, you may feel guilt. Guilt for choosing yourself. Guilt for disappointing others. Guilt for breaking patterns that once kept the peace. But peace that requires self-sacrifice is not peace at all. It is suppression. And guilt fades when you realize that protecting yourself-respect allows you to show up more fully in the rest of your life. Staying too long in places that harm you teaches you to normalize disrespect. It teaches you to accept crumbs when you deserve nourishment. Walking away retrains your spirit. It reminds you that you are allowed to want more, that you are allowed to leave situations that drain you, that you do not have to earn humane treatment. There is a moment of clarity that often comes after walking away. A moment when you realize how heavy the burden was, how much energy you spent managing emotions that were never yours to manage. You begin to breathe differently. You begin to sleep more deeply. You begin to recognize yourself again. This is not coincidence. This is what happens when self-respect is restored. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries may react strongly when you choose to walk away. They may minimize your feelings. They may rewrite history. They may accuse you of being selfish or cold. These reactions are not proof that you are wrong. They are proof that your absence has weight. Self-respect does not require that others understand your choice. Walking away also teaches you discernment. You become more attentive to how people make you feel. You become less willing to tolerate inconsistency, manipulation, or neglect. You begin to choose relationships that feel reciprocal, supportive, and honest. This is not arrogance. This is growth shaped by experience. Strength is knowing that you cannot save relationships that require you to drown. Strength is understanding that love without respect is not love, but obligation. Strength is recognizing that your worth does not decrease because someone failed to see it. Walking away affirms that truth without needing permission. There will be days when you miss what you left behind, when loneliness creeps in, when doubt whispers that maybe you should have stayed longer, tried harder, explained more. In those moments, remember why you left. Remember how it felt to abandon yourself just to keep others comfortable. Self-respect is choosing not to return to what broke you just because it feels familiar. Walking away creates space. Space for healing. Space for clarity. Space for people who will meet you with respect instead of resistance. This space may feel empty at first, but emptiness is not failure. It is preparation. It is room for something healthier to grow. Strength does not always look like holding on. Sometimes it looks like releasing your grip and trusting that you will land on your feet. Sometimes it looks like choosing yourself even when no one else does. Sometimes it looks like walking away quietly, without bitterness, without revenge, simply because staying would mean losing yourself, and you have finally decided that you are worth keeping